Well, I guess it's time for a little bit more GPU drama. All right, so today we're gonna be talking about some more GPU stuff. Trust me, this sucks for everyone involved. Before we get into the drama, we're gonna go ahead and bring this video to you by us, and the new JC2Sense Retro Gaming mat and the original style mats are back in stock. You guys have been asking for months, when are they gonna be back in stock? Well, they're there and they're available right now, so you guys can find a link down in the description below or head to jc2sense.com at the end of the video so you guys can have your nice new gaming mat to put your potentially brick GPU on to keep it nice and protected from the table, I guess. Anyway, moving on right now. Okay, so we're gonna talk about Gigabyte video cards here. And no, we're not talking about the Diablo 4 killing graphics cards again, although I've gotten no less than 10 emails since the early access of Diablo 4 has launched of folks telling me their 3080 or 3080 Ti Gigabyte card is the dreaded black screen with 100% fan and then crashing upon restart. Just to kind of put that one out there real quick, Diablo is not killing your card. Your card has a defect that Diablo is just happening to be exploiting, just like how New World was exploiting a defect in EVGA 3090 cards in a certain batch. So this is not that though. This is something that, so I was sent an email by Jeremy. Jeremy, you know who you are, who is I believe a GPU repair tech somewhere that has been dealing with an influx of 30 series graphics cards being sent in for repair, but not for the reasons that we just described. This one is actual physical damage, actual cracking taking place on the board somewhere. Now, normally this isn't the kind of thing where I would just jump in and talk about it, but Louis Rossmann did a video about this, and I'm gonna link his video down below. You should definitely go and watch it. Louis Rossmann is a repair technician. He is an electrical engineer guy, fixer, guru. Remember I made him hiss by trying to solder something back on my graphics card once, and then I ended up just hot gluing it, and he literally lost his shit, which was probably the best project I ever did. Hey Louis, I've been working on it. I'm trying to get better, okay? Moving on. Oh, by the way, if you guys watch Northridge Fix, he's local. I would absolutely love to do a collab video with him where he teaches me the right way to do something. So you guys should all go tell Northridge Fix like, hey, Jay really wants to learn how to solder correctly. And he sells all that stuff, so I want to buy it all. But anyway, moving on, we are talking about retention tabs right here, cracking and breaking. Now this, if you're not aware, this is one of the locking points that take place on your graphics card to keep it from falling out of the PCI Express socket. This is that one that typically is really hard to get to release as graphics cards get bigger and your air coolers get closer to it. Motherboard manufacturers have started putting buttons. Asus kind of started it. I think Gigabyte's doing it now too. A little release button so you can get it out more easily. And then the other place it mounts, obviously, is the screws that go on the actual I/O side of the case. So you have two contact points, technically three, but these two are not wide enough to be considered triangulated, so really it's a dual contact point. These screws, and then the tab right there. So if you look at these photos that Louis has basically gone and kind of done the legwork of finding Reddit posts of Gigabyte denying warranty claims of broken graphics cards over and 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 over again by putting a red arrow on here, a little sticker, a warranty denied sticker. These tabs are cracking, and they're cracking repeatedly. Now here's the thing, that normally wouldn't be a big deal other than the fact that your graphics card would maybe flop around a little bit, but for whatever reason, in 30 series graphics cards specifically, this is a 4090 by the way, but the reason why I brought the 4090 out of, this is Phil's 4090 out of his edit rig. The reason why I brought it out is I wanted to feel the rigidity of the PCB material here. Now PCBs are almost always multi-layer, in fact they're guaranteed to be multi-layer, and for whatever reason in the 30 series graphics cards, where the crack forms and kind of splits its way up the PCB, there are traces in there. They're usually power traces that are coming off the PCI Express slot, and when that cracks, it breaks those traces, which basically renders the card dead. So with so many repair facilities now trying to fix these graphics cards over and over and over, having to file down the crack and then resolder traces on there, I started wondering, like, if you're Gigabyte and you get a couple in and you go, oh, there's a crack, and you you deny the warranty, that makes sense. But if you're also Gigabyte and you're getting a card after card after card after card after card after card repeatedly with the same problem, wouldn't you start to go, maybe there's a defect here? Now, there's a couple of different ways that this could potentially be happening. So first and foremost, Louis is attributing it to GPU sag, and that very well could be the case because 30 series cards, unlike a lot of the 40 series, I've done multiple videos throughout the life of 30 series cards calling out 3080, 3080 Ti, and 3090 manufacturers for not triangulating this piece right here. So this piece not being mounted to the cooler, this is where the sag is happening. I've identified this, I have proven it, I have showed repeated videos of how to make a card stop sagging without having to use any sort of a brace on the back of the card whatsoever. So this card is tied in right here. It is absolutely tied in. It is screwed down to the bracket. The 4090 is actually not. I want to show this real quick. That is not tied in at all. So they have the cooler right there and they put a little tab so that as it starts to sag, it sort of sandwiches and pushes against it, but it would still be better to have it screwed down. That way, as you're wiggling your card to try and get it in and out, you're not flexing it. But he's attributing the fact that if the card is sagging horizontally, right, and it starts to laterally twist, that could be putting tension on there to crack it. Now I'll go a step farther and say I feel like these could also be cracking from people maybe not getting their button depressed all the way, because remember how I just talked about the fact that there are lots of air coolers that will get really close to the graphics card and completely block your ability to get to that tab. If you just start thinking it's released and you start yanking up on it, if this material's weak, then that could also crack like this way, not necessarily this way. However, the reason why I pulled out Phil's 4090 is the fact that I wanted to see what does the material feel like. And let me show you this little video that we took right now. It is awfully flimsy, like scary amounts of flimsy. I used a control with the Asus 4080 PCB, also flexing that same area. And although both do have there's nothing in the world that doesn't flex if you don't push on it hard enough. The 4080 is significantly stronger from Asus in that area than the Gigabyte card. So I feel like it's only a matter of time till we start seeing this with the 4090s as well. The other thing is, like, in the PCB design, why on earth would you bring traces down that close to the tab? Now, the 4080 technically has traces farther down in that tab than the Gigabyte card does if you look at them side by side. But what happens is the crack, when it happens, especially if it's a stress crack, it shoots up. So it goes well beyond that tab. The tab doesn't break off, but it creates a crack through the PCB. And this is something that Gigabyte needs to stand by. But the problem is, if Gigabyte knows they have a problem with a card that's part of a physical defect of rigidity issues, then they're not gonna wanna stand by the product because of the fact that they're gonna have who knows how many RMA cards coming in. They probably don't have enough 30 series to even be able to RMA those, because the type of repair that you'd have to do on this is kind of janky. You literally have to grind down the PCB to expose those traces, and then you solder in copper wire. It's like a single strand, like solid wire that you have to solder in. And that's what these repair facilities are doing to make it work. But here's the thing, that crack can still continue on. I mean, they probably are trying to resin it up and make it stronger, but if the whole PCB material itself is, I mean, it's so flimsy. And the thing is, it's not like it's any thinner than the Asus card. All right, so I'm gonna use my iFixit calipers here to measure the thickness of the material right here at the retention tab. So let's lock it down. It is measuring 2 millimeters, 2.01 millimeters. That 0.01 is probably just, yeah, margin of error. 1.68. I thought it felt thinner. So it's a little over a millimeter and a half. The Gigabyte card is thicker and weaker. So I don't know what PCB material is made out of, but it's crazy that the thicker one here has more flex in it than the thinner one. It's funny because you can feel, like, you guys have to just take my word for how much I'm moving it, right? And it's not like I'm applying a perfect amount of force to each one that's identical, but you can definitely feel it. The piece of information that I feel like is missing from some of the data that Louis Rossmann was collecting was, I would love to know how many of those cards that are cracked were mounted vertically. Because if they were mounted vertically, then that weight is going down into the socket, and that tab is not being affected unless, when people are working on it, they're flexing it like this. It's not locked down, trying to get it in, versus horizontal with that sag. I think it's a double-edged sword. I feel like the weak part right there could be affected by sag. It could be affected by people plugging in their cable and yanking on it, and just if it's weak. This is the only Gigabyte card we have right here. If I had a 30 series Gigabyte card, I might have sacrificed it in this video by plugging it into the motherboard and seeing how much we can move it around and see if we can get it to crack. This is quite literally the only Gigabyte card that we have, and it's Phil's edit rig, and it's a 4090, so I'm not gonna break it until it breaks itself. If it does, and with how flexy that is, I'm be concerned about that.
Plus, I need that to make this video right now.
You can make the video with any card. It's a 4080, you can have that one.
No, it doesn't say 90 at the end.
On the other hand, the connector looks perfect, by the way. We've been keeping an eye on stuff periodically. Why am I making this video? No, it's not about views, it's about bringing, well, views is actually important, not in the aspect of like AdSense or whatever, but getting as many eyes on this as possible, because if you get enough people talking about it and complaining about it, hopefully the brand would be aware. So like Lewis brought up in his video, brands that can get away with murder because they have enough cult following and blind followers to blind loyalty, they can do whatever and people will defend them. Apple, Tesla, he said politicians, but I mean, whatever. There's a lot of aspects to our lives that people will just blindly defend blanketly and don't care and shill and etc. Gigabyte, on the other hand, doesn't tend to have that level of following. And Lewis makes a good point when he says that. One of the reasons why we don't have any Gigabyte cards here, this was part of a sponsored build by Micro Center. So this is the card, that we ended up using for that build. It's because I kind of stopped using Gigabyte back in like the 20 series because of the fact that there was a while there where they were using such flimsy metal on their cooler shrouds that when you would go to put it in the box and you'd push the lid, like the foam piece down, it would actually squish the metal shroud and make the fans no longer turn because it was such a poor design. It's just not a brand that we've really used because it's not one that we trusted for the longest time. But we already talked about the Diablo 4 issue and the fact that it's very unlikely that Gigabyte is going to stand by their warranty. Now, I did have a rep from Gigabyte reach out to me and say, we absolutely do plan on standing by our warranty, but the amount of people that have had their warranties denied since playing that game and trying to send in their card, or them blanket denying any sort of physical PCB damage to their graphics card, tells me that they will look for any reason to deny a claim. Now, again, I've said this already and I'm going to say it again. Common sense, which is not common by the way, if you're a brand that made something and you have RMAs coming in with the same defect repeatedly, you gotta start asking yourself, what is the common denominator here? It's us. You've got who knows how many different systems and cases and motherboard types. If the common denominator is you, then guess what? You've got to look internal as to what the problem is. But the thing is, Gigabyte, if they see any sort of physical damage to their PCB at all, whether that crack or whatever, even if that's the thing you're trying to get fixed, it's an automatic deny. They put a red sticker on it, send it back to you, charge you shipping and say, hey, you broke it. The funny thing is, like this conversation is kind of looking something like this. Hey Gigabyte, your card stopped working. Now most people don't. If you have a Gigabyte card right now and it's a 30 series card, gently remove it and maybe inspect that area. Because if it stops working, you probably won't know there's a crack there. People might start to look for it now, but prior to this, you probably didn't know there was a crack there. Gigabyte clearly knew to look there. Why were they finding such a small, minuscule crack? I mean, something tells me they already knew if they were zeroed in on that part of the card for inspection. If you're the brand that goes, hey, you reach out to Gigabyte and say, hey, I've got a card that's not working anymore. Okay, send it to us. And it's like, oh, your card broke right there, so we're not warrantying it. Why? Because it broke. But it broke because of your defect. Yeah, but the defect's not covered under warranty. Like, that's kind of what they're saying. And it's a shitty conversation, and unfortunately, it is happening on cards that when people were buying them were in the thousands of dollars. So anyway, the point of this video is to bring and shed light on it. I firmly believe whatever process they're using to build their PCBs, even though it's thicker, it is more flimsy. Here's that video again, you can see it. No, I am not pushing harder on the Asus or on the Gigabyte card than the Asus card to try and make some sort of a point. The Asus card is physically stronger. It is 25% thinner. And you know what? If anything, I was probably pushing less hard on the Gigabyte card because I don't want to break Phil's card. He needs it. So anyway, if you guys are local to us in Southern California, and you have a Gigabyte 30 series card, a 3080 Ti, 3080, 3090, hit me up at jscsense@gmail.com. Maybe I'll work out a trade with you where I give you one of our known very lightly used. Most of our cards don't get used very heavily around here, where I trade you for your 3090 and then I actually do some stress testing on it to see if I can get it to crack. And what I need to be able to break one of these cards, but I'm not going to borrow it from you and break it and give it back to you. So that would probably, that's something Gigabyte would probably do. But anyway, moving on, if you're local, I don't want to deal with shipping, I just want local. I would love to trade you a high-end 3090, 3080 Ti card with the big cooler for your Gigabyte card so that I can try and break it for science. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Gigabyte, do the right thing. Stand by your product. Don't just... This is why people are so jaded in the PC community right now. Because here's the thing, if you've saved up the money to buy this during, the 30 series existed during arguably the worst time for trying to build a computer. And if you're gonna reward the customers that put trust into your product and then you don't stand by it, you are just giving a big middle finger to the entire industry. And I feel like the reciprocal of that should be the industry giving you the finger and saying you should not be a part of this industry. So anyway, guys, this is where the community needs to basically be loud and say, Gigabyte, do the right thing. I mean, it's time to reach out to them through any means that they have public and implore them to do the right thing. Stand by their product. I've showed you just the photos that Lewis found. And I guarantee if you look up Gigabyte 30 series cracked PCB, you will find an entire day's worth of scrolling pleasure of finding broken PCBs at the same exact area. And that has to be a defect. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully Steve covers this. I bet you Steve will also try and find a way to break it. Not if I get to it first. It's not a race. I just want Gigabyte to stand by their product. We'll see you guys in the next one.